Honey, you need to tell her now. I think this is the right time. Once mom hesitated, her hands trembling slightly as she folded them in her lap. Her gaze was distant, filled with worry, before she turned to look at her husband. I know, but what if she refuses? What if she resents us for this? She won't trust me. She's our daughter and she's always respected our decisions. I believe in her. She won't let us down. His voice was firm, full of conviction, and despite her fears, Wine's mom felt a small wave of reassurance wash over her. She gave him a reluctant nod before standing up, her heart heavy as she made her way to their daughter's room, her mind racing with possibilities. I had just woken up, the soft morning light streaming through the curtains, painting my room in a hazy glow. My hair was a mess, sticking out in all directions, and I was still sitting groggily on the bed when a light knock echoed through the room. Before I could say anything, the door creaked open, and there stood my mom. Her gentle smile growing as she realized I was awake, she walked over, her steps soft and careful, as if she were preparing herself for something serious. As she reached me, she smoothed out the tangled strands of my hair with her fingers and cupped my cheek with a tenderness that made me feel both comforted and slightly uneasy. Good morning, mine. How did you sleep? Her voice was soft, filled with a mixture of warmth and nervousness. It was good, Mom. I could feel my voice still heavy from sleep. Her eyes dropped for a second, hesitation clear in the way she bit her lip. Mom, is something wrong? You look worried. She nodded, her eyes meeting mine, but her words still slow. Then why are you hesitating? You know you can't tell me anything. She took a deep breath, sitting down on the edge of my bed. You know, your father's best friend, Mr. John, right? I nodded, curious about where this was going. Well, your father and he made a promise long ago that his son Jungkook would marry our daughter. Her voice trailed off, the weight of her words settling in the room. My eyes widened slightly. Wait, what? She nodded, watching me carefully, as if bracing herself for my reaction. A moment of silence passed before I let out a long sigh, processing everything. I gave her a small smile, though I could feel the tension building inside. Mom, if you and Dad think he is a good person, then I trust you. I know you both want the best for me. Her eyes softened, relief washing over her face. But he is 10 years older than you. My eyes widened again. Wait, what? I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around what she had just said. An arranged marriage to Jungkook? She nodded slightly, her eyes studying my face, waiting for a reaction. I could see the worry in her expression. Her hands clenched in her lap as if bracing for an outburst. So you're saying Dad and Mr. John decided this and now I'm supposed to marry him? Yes, but there is something else. He's 10 years older than you. Her eyes widened even more and she felt her heart skip again. 10 years older, she nodded again, watching me carefully as if the age gap was the biggest concern. I sat there taking in the news, trying to process it. I had always trusted my parents, but this was a lot. After a few moments of silence, I let out a long sigh and gave her a small, reassuring smile. Mom, if you and Dad think Jungkook is the right person for me, then I trust you. I know you both only want what's best for me. Her eyes softened instantly, the tension in her shoulders melting away as relief filled her face. But, sweetie, it's not just about us. Your happiness matters too. I know, Mom, but as long as you and Dad are happy, I will be fine. And age, it's just a number, right? I tried to sound confident even though my mind was still racing. Her expression softened even more, and before I knew it, she leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead, lingering for a moment as if to thank me for my understanding. You are such a good daughter. Thank you. She stood up slowly, giving me one last warm smile before she left the room. As the door closed behind her, I lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling as my thoughts swirled around the sudden news of my future marriage to Jungkook. The wedding had been beautiful, the perfect blend of tradition and elegance. Jungkook had been his usual calm and composed self throughout the ceremony, but now, as we stood outside the house that both our parents had gifted us, something felt off. He didn't even glance my way as he stepped through the door, leaving me to follow behind. I furrowed my brow, confusion swirling in my mind. What happened to him? I wondered. He seemed fine earlier, so why is he acting distant now? I trailed behind him, trying to shake off the uncertainty gnawing at me. But it was hard to ignore the sudden shift in his demeanor. The house was stunning, everything we could have ever asked for. But I couldn't focus on that. All I could think about was Jungkook's cold attitude. As we reached the living room, he finally turned to face me. His expression was unreadable, his voice even more detached. Wine, come, I will show you the room. He didn't wait for a response, just turned and began walking again. I nodded, feeling too tired from the day's events to question him or start a conversation. My body ached from the weight of the ceremony and the expectations that had come with it. So I followed silently. The bedroom was spacious and elegantly decorated, but my exhaustion prevented me from fully taking it in. Jungkook gestured around the room, barely looking at me. This is it. His words were clipped, almost as if he couldn't be bothered. Before I could say anything, he turned and left, disappearing into the adjoining room without a second glance. I stood there for a moment, feeling the emptiness of the room press in around me. The man I had married just hours ago was now treating me like a stranger. I shook off the unease, thinking maybe he was just as exhausted as I was, and I decided to change into something more comfortable. The day had been long, and my mind was too tired to dwell on his strange behavior. Jungkook, already in bed, facing away from me, he had not said a word, not even good night. I bite my lip, feeling a pang of heart, but pushed it aside. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe the reality of the marriage was just hitting him. I quietly made my way to the other side of the bed and lay down. The cold distance between us feeling more than just physical. The silence in the room was deafening. He had not even acknowledged me, not once since we arrived here. As I stared at the ceiling, I couldn't help but feel the weight of this new chapter in my life. My heart felt heavy and my mind raced with questions. I didn't have the courage to ask, why is he being like this? Did I do something wrong? I turned slightly, stealing a glance at his back, but he didn't move. With a sigh, I shifted back and closed my eyes, hoping sleep would come quickly and that tomorrow might bring answers. But even as exhaustion claimed me, the cold space between us seemed to widen, leaving me more confused and alone than ever. The next morning, I woke up before Jungkook. The sun was just starting to peek through the curtains, casting a soft glow over the room. He was still asleep, his back turned to me, his breathing steady. I watched him for a moment, wondering what had caused this sudden distance between us. With a sigh, I quietly slipped out of bed and went about my morning routine, hoping that today would be different, that maybe he would explain what was going on. After getting ready, I headed to the kitchen, deciding to make breakfast for the both of us. Maybe a nice meal would help ease the tension between us. I worked in silence, the sizzle of eggs and the aroma of fresh toast filling the room. As I set the table, I mentally prepared myself to talk to him, to figure out what had gone wrong. We were newlyweds. We should be enjoying these moments together, not feeling like strangers. When I heard Jungkook's footsteps approaching, my heart raced a little. This is it. I thought I will ask him and we will clear the air. He sat down at the dining table, his expression still unreadable, his presence heavy with the same coldness from the night before. I placed the food in front of him and took a seat across from him. I took a deep breath, trying to choose my words carefully. Jungkook, I hesitated, feeling the tension in the air grow as he picked up his fork. Why are you acting like this? You have been so distant since we came home. Did I do something wrong? My voice was soft, cautious, but I needed answers. Jungkook's fork clinked against his plate as he set it down a little too hard. He looked up at me, his expression hard, his eyes cold. What do you mean, acting like this? I'm just tired, Vine. Don't make a big deal out of everything. His tone was sharp, cutting through the air like a knife. I flinched slightly, taken aback by how harsh his words were. I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it. I swallowed, feeling the sting of his coldness settle deeper. I don't understand what's wrong. You were fine yesterday, but ever since we came here, you have been different. He sighed, clearly annoyed, and took a bite of his food without even looking at me. Can we just eat? Not everything has to be about your feelings. Wine, I said, I'm tired. That's all. His dismissive tone made my heart sink. It was like he was shutting me out completely, and it hurt more than I wanted to admit. I stared down at my plate, my appetite fading with each second that passed. The warm breakfast I had prepared with the hope of breaking his tension now seemed pointless. Okay, I didn't push further. It was clear he wasn't in the mood to talk, or maybe he just didn't want to talk to me. The rest of the meal was eaten in silence, the only sound being the clinking of utensils against plates. I felt the coldness between us grew even more, and with each moment, the hope I had for any sort of connection faded. A week had passed, and it was starting to feel unbearable. Every day was the same. Jungkook leaving for work early in the morning without so much as a word, and me spending hours alone in this big empty house. Whenever I tried to speak to him, he brushed me off, sometimes with cold indifference, other times with short, harsh responses that stung. I felt trapped. He would return home late at night, too tired to engage in any real conversation. The distance between us grew with each passing day, and I was starting to feel like a ghost in my own marriage. That afternoon, as I sat idly on the couch, the silence was interrupted by my phone ringing. It was Luna. I answered eagerly, grateful to hear a friendly voice. Wine, how's it going? She asked with her usual cheer, but I couldn't bring myself to fake enthusiasm. Honestly, I'm bored out of my mind. Jungkook's at work all day, and I have nothing to do around here. It's like I'm just waiting for nothing. Luna's tone softened, sensing my frustration. That sounds awful. You need something to keep you busy. Why don't you come work with me? There is an opening at my company and it will get you out of the house. Her suggestion gave me pause. It was tempting. The idea of doing something, being productive, instead of sitting alone every day. That sounds great, honestly, but I will need to talk to Jungkook about it first. Of course, but you deserve to do something for yourself. Why? Don't let him keep you cooped up. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, feeling a small glimmer of hope. Maybe this could be a way to find some balance in my life. That evening, I waited for Jungkook to come home, my nerves on edge. When he finally walked through the door, his expression was the same as it had been all week, exhausted, distant. He loosened his tie without looking at me and headed straight for the kitchen. Grabbing a glass of water, I followed him, gathering my courage. Jungkook, can we talk for a second? He didn't respond at first, just drank his water, his back to me. I bite my lip, trying to stay calm. I have been thinking I want to start working. I have been feeling really bored and lonely at home, and Luna suggested there is an opening at her company. I thought it could be a good idea. Before I could finish, Jungkook slammed his glass down on the counter, startling me. He turned around, his eyes hard and full of irritation. Really, Vine? You want to talk about this now? His voice was low, but the annoyance in it was impossible to miss. I just thought. He cut me off, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe what I was saying. You know what? You are a headache. That's what you are. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I blinked, trying to process what he would just said. My heart tightened painfully, and I could feel the sting of tears turning to foam. Jungkook, I didn't mean I'm tired, Vine. I don't have the energy for this right now. With that, he turned away, heading toward the bedroom without another glance at me, leaving me standing there in stunned silence. I stood frozen, the sound of his words echoing in my mind. A headache, the one person I thought would understand, the person I just married, saw me as nothing more than a burden. My chest ached and I felt the weight of everything. His coldness, the loneliness of the past week crashed down on me all at once. I took a deep breath, swallowing the heart, but the pain of his words lingered long after he disappeared into the bedroom. After the incident with Jungkook last night, I felt even more determined. If he wasn't going to support me, I would take matters into my own hands. I couldn't just sit around at home anymore, waiting for things to change, so I decided to go for the interview Luna had told me about. The next morning, I arrived at the company feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. The building was sleek, modern, and bustling with people. After checking in at the front desk, I was led to the office of Andrew, the interviewer. He was warm and welcoming, instantly putting me at ease with his friendly demeanor. The interview went smoothly. Andrew was impressed with my qualifications and experience, and before I knew it, he smiled and extended his hand to me. Congratulations, Vine, you're exactly what we are looking for. Welcome to the team. His tone was enthusiastic, and as I shook his hand, I couldn't help but smile back. Relieved and excited, this was a new chapter for me, and I was ready for it. After the interview, Andrew offered to show me around the department where I would be working. We walked through the bustling office space, and I noticed how easygoing and friendly he was, chatting about the work culture and introducing me to a few other employees along the way. Eventually, we arrived at the door of the department where I would be working. Andrea paused and smiled. And here is where you will be reporting to the manager. He pushed open the door, and to my surprise, standing there was none other than Jungkook. My heart skipped a beat, our eyes met, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. His expression shifted from shock to something unreadable. He looked as though he had not expected to see me here, especially not like this. I couldn't tell what he was thinking, but I could feel the tension in the air. Andrew, oblivious to the tension, introduced us with a wide smile. Jungkook, this is Vine, our new recruit. She will be working in your department. He turned to me, his hand slightly brushing against mine as he spoke. Vine, this is Jungkook, your new manager. The touch was innocent, just a friendly gesture, but I saw Jungkook's jaw clench slightly, his eyes narrowing at the sight. What was he thinking? I thought there was no way he would expect me to be here. But before I could speak, he broke the silence. Miss Wine, his voice was cool, but there was an edge to it. You are married, are not you? His eyes flicked down to where Andrew's hands had just touched mine, his gaze sharp and possessive. Don't you think it's inappropriate for another man to be touching you? Wouldn't your husband feel bad? His words were pointed, almost accusatory, and I felt a flush of embarrassment creeping up my neck. Andrew looked confused, glancing between the two of us. How do you know wine is married, sir? Andrew's question hung in the air, and for a second, the room went still. Jungkook's expression darkened, and he shot Andrew a look that could freeze fire. That's none of your business, and she's my friend's wife. His tone was sharp, cutting off the conversation before it could go any further. Oh, so you know each other. Now, if you don't mind, I need to give her some instructions about the work. Andrew blinked, clearly confused by the sudden shift in tone, but he nodded, backing away with a slightly awkward smile. Of course, I will leave you two to it. With that, Andrew gave me a quick nod and left the room, leaving me alone with Jungkook. As the door closed, I turned to face Jungkook. His expression was unreadable, but the tension between us was thick. I didn't know if he was angry, jealous, or something else entirely, but I couldn't deny the way his words had stung. Why was he acting like this? Oh, so his friend's wife. Was he jealous? Did he actually care? But before I could say anything, Jungkook's voice broke through my thoughts. So you decided to work here without telling me first. His tone was calm, but there was an undercurrent of something more beneath it, something that made my heart race. Why didn't you tell me about it? He suddenly pulled me closer, his hands gripping my arms gently but firmly. The intensity of his gaze sent my heart racing, and I felt a mix of surprise and uncertainty wash over me. I tried to talk to you, Jungkook, but you didn't listen. The words came out before I could stop myself, my frustration spilling over. I was tired of feeling ignored, of being pushed aside as if I didn't matter. As I looked up into his eyes, I could see the conflict within him. He seemed to wrestle with his thoughts for a moment, and then, suddenly, a flashback from last night surfaced in his mind. He remembered how he had snapped at me, how he had not given me a chance to explain myself. Maybe he had been too harsh. Maybe I had a right to pursue my own happiness too. Jungkook sighed, letting go of my arms, his expression softening just a little. I shouldn't have reacted like that. He ran a hand through his hair. The tension is in his shoulders easing slightly. I watched as he processed the situation. Feeling a flicker of hope that he might finally understand. So now you can tell me about the work. I tried to keep my voice steady, wanting to shift the focus away from our earlier confrontation. I was ready to dive into this new opportunity and I hoped Jungkook would be supportive, even if our personal issues lingered in the background. He nodded slowly, his demeanor shifting back to the professional manager I was seen before. Right, let's go over your responsibilities and how you will fit into the team. He gestured for me to sit down at one of the desks in the office, and I did, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. You will be working on various projects with the team, helping with reports and client communications. I'll be overseeing your progress. He paused, looking directly into my eyes. Just remember, why this is a professional environment. We can't let personal matters interfere with work. I nodded, feeling a rush of determination. This was my chance to prove myself, not just to Jungkook, but to me. I could build my own path while navigating this complicated new life we were living together. 1 month later, the atmosphere in the office buzzed with a mix of excitement and anticipation. A new project was on the horizon, and the day had finally arrived for the meeting with Mr. Lucas. The project partner, I sat at the table, focused on my notes, while Jungkook, my manager, led the discussion with his usual assertiveness. As the meeting unfolded, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lucas' gaze was lingering on me longer than necessary. I glanced up occasionally, catching him watching me with a smile that sent an uncomfortable shiver down my spine. I tried to stay focused, but it was hard when I felt his attention pressing against me like a weight. The meeting wrapped up and everyone filed out of the room. I started gathering my things, eager to leave, but just as I was about to step out, I felt a hand grip my wrist. My heart raced as I turned to see Lucas standing too close for comfort. Hey, wine, wait a second. Before I could respond, he leaned in, attempting to brush his lips against mine. Panic surged through me and I instinctively pulled back, trying to break free from his hold. Jungkook's point of view, finally, the meeting is over. Now I just need to text Ryan about those documents. Where's my phone? He glanced around the room, realization dawning that he must have left it behind. As he walked back to the meeting room, he felt a strange sense of urgency. But when he stepped inside, the sight before him stopped him in his tracks. Wine was leaning over Lucas. Their faces dangerously close, and it looked like Wine was trying to kiss him. Jungkook's heart raced with anger and disbelief. Jungkook, look, your employee is trying to kiss me. Jungkook's mind raced, clouded by jealousy and misunderstanding. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Wine's eyes widened in shock as he pushed Lucas away and sprinted toward Jungkook, wrapping her arms around him tightly. Jungkook, it's not what it looks like. He was trying to. But before she could explain, Jungkook's hurt and anger twisted the words into something unrecognizable. How could you let this happen? His voice was a low growl, tension coiling in the air around them. You saw it, Jungkook? She was all over me. The accusation hung heavily and Jungkook's heart sank. He didn't know what to believe. No, please listen to me. He was trying to force himself on me. But Jungkook's eyes darkened, catch in a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, anger, and confusion. In that moment, everything felt like it was slipping away from Wine. She looked up at Jungkook, desperation in her eyes, hoping to reach him through the haze of misunderstanding. Jungkook, please, you have to trust me. But Jungkook stood frozen, the weight of Lucas' words echoing in his mind, clouding the bond they had been trying to rebuild. Jungkook's expression darkened, and without a word, he pushed Wine away slightly, stepping back as if she had burned him. I can't believe you would let this happen. Lucas smirked, clearly enjoying the chaos he had stirred. Looks like your manager doesn't believe you. His tone was mocking, but before Wine could respond, the door swung open and Andrew stepped inside, sensing the tension in the room immediately. What happened? Wine? He rushed over, concern etched on his face as he noticed the tears streaming down her cheeks. It was Lucas. He tried to. Her voice cracked and she quickly recounted the entire incident, her words trembling out in a rush. Andrew listened intently, his expression shifting from concern to anger as he absorbed her story. Jungkook shouldn't have reacted like that. We need to figure this out. He glanced at Lucas, who was still standing smugly at the edge of the room. Shouldn't we check the CCTV footage? Lucas' eyes widened at the suggestion, his confident demeanor faltering. There is no need for that. Everything is clear as day. Andrew narrowed his eyes, unconvinced. If you are so sure you are in the right, then why are you sweating? The atmosphere thickened with tension as Andrew gestured for Wine to follow him to the monitor with Jungkook. They watched the footage play out in real time, Wine's heart racing as the moment unfolded before their eyes. Suddenly, Jungkook's expression was fierce and determined. He had clearly made up his mind. Watching the video, he caught sight of Lucas leaning in toward Wine, and a surge of anger rushed through him. How could you try to force yourself on my wife? He moved toward Lucas, fists clenched, ready to defend mine at all costs. The shock on Andrew's face was evident as he processed Jungkook's words. Wait, you are married? His surprise cut through the tension and Jungkook's jaw tightened, feeling a mix of protectiveness and fury. Yes, she's my wife, and you are going to regret this. He took a step closer to Lucas, who seemed to shrink under Jungkook's glare. The confident smirk wiped off his face. Just a misunderstanding, but his voice was shaky, and it was clear to everyone present that he was scrambling to regain control of the situation. After dealing with Lucas and ensuring that justice was served, Jungkook took wine home. The ride was silent, the tension between them growing heavier with each passing moment. As soon as they arrived, Wine headed straight to the bedroom. Jungkook followed, his heart pounding when he saw her pulling out a suitcase and packing her things. Where are you going? His voice was laced with desperation as he watched her throw clothes into the suitcase without looking up at him. I'm leaving, Jungkook. He spoke firmly, her voice carrying the weight of her decision. You have ignored me for weeks. You called me a headache. You told Andrew I was just your friend's wife, and most importantly, you didn't believe me when I needed you the most. Jungkook's face crumbled, guilt and regret flooding his expression. I'm sorry, I should have believed you. I didn't mean it like that. He stammered, his voice cracking as he struggled to find the right words. And about what I told Andrew, I only said that because I didn't want you to feel trapped. I thought you were forced to marry me. I didn't want you to feel pity for yourself. Wine stopped packing and turned to face him, her eyes filled with disbelief. Who the hell said I was forced? Her voice trembled with anger. I love you, Jungkook. You were my crush before we even got married. I was never forced into this. I chose you because I wanted to. Jungkook's eyes widened, shock and realization washing over him. What? A tear slipped down his cheek as the truth finally sank in. I thought you were forced, so I tried to keep my distance. I didn't want you to feel burdened by me, especially since I'm 10 years older than you. Age is just a number. Jungkook, I never cared about the age difference. But your behavior, her voice cracked as tears welled up in her eyes. Your behavior made me regret my decision. I should have listened to my head, not my heart. Maybe I should not have married you after all. Jungkook's heart shattered as he heard those words. The pain in her voice piercing through him. He stepped closer, tears falling freely now. Please, Vine, don't say that. I love you too. I was wrong. I should have trusted you. Please forgive me. Please don't leave me. Wyan looked at him, her heart itching at the sight of his tears. But the pain he caused her was too deep. I'm sorry, Jungkook. I couldn't stay like this. You have lost my trust and you will have to earn it back. She zipped up her suitcase and walked toward the door, leaving Jungkook standing there broken. As she stepped out of the room, she glanced back one last time, her eyes filled with sorrow. I will live without you until you prove that you truly deserve me. With that, she walked away, leaving Jungkook alone, his heart heavy with the weight of his mistakes.